does not derive you out of your homes, you can deal with them in the nicest way, in the best way, but it's different with those who fight against you. What do you think and what do you expect Islam or any religion to tell you? Those who are fighting against you, what should you do with them? At least you should fight back. So that's Islam, what Islam is talking about. So the principle is deal kindly and nicely with everybody who is dealing with you likewise. Violent, so-called violent passages in the Quran. Fighting is allowed against invaders regardless of their faith. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us, because Islam is not a religion for rituals only, how to worship God in terms of praying and saying dua. It's giving you rules for country, for how to establish a full system. Part of that system is you need to fight. How many armies we have in the world? Every country got an army. Is that violence? No, the country will use that in the right way, in the right time, but that's not violence. Could be misused, could be abused, but every country has an army. Every person has somehow, some power to defend himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us about fighting in the Quran. He's talking to us about fighting against non-Muslims, and believe it or not, he's talking to us about fighting against Muslims sometimes. If two groups of Muslims, he said, if two groups of believers, they fight against each other. One of them is oppressing and fighting the other group with no valid reason. What should we do? Allah said, fight against them, stop them by power. So it's not only against non-Muslims, it's against what? Against what? If we can fight against non-Muslims and even Muslims who do aggression. So fighting is against what? Is against aggression and oppression and anybody who is doing wrong. So that in this case it's fine. Fighting against peaceful people is prohibited regardless of their faith. Have you seen it anywhere that Muslims are told to fight against peaceful people? Even in the battlefield, you cannot fight against somebody who is not fighting you. You cannot fight women, for example, if they are not fighting. Children, the Prophet, that's the words of the Prophet. When he sent the army, do not fight a woman, a child. You will find some religious people, monks, worshipping the Lord, leave them alone. So that's obvious that fighting is only within, in the battlefield against those who are fighting against us during the warfare and so on. All violent verses, so-called violent verses, talk about fighting back in self-defense, making peace if attackers cease. وَإِنْ جَنَحُوا لِلسِّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. So if Islam is about aggression, logically, then it should, the point is to remove them all. No, Allah said, the minute they ask for peace, what? Give them peace. وَإِنْ جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. They cease fire, they ask for ceasefire. But we stand for our right and we fight and we establish what we think is right, everything. We fight against aggression. The minute they say, no, we don't want to fight anymore, فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. We read this in the Quran that stop war and go for peace. Even after you start fighting already. Violent passages are in all of these chapters, 219 to 193, chapter 9. You can read them in context for yourself, and all passages, you will find them talking about conflicts between early Muslims and the pagans of Mecca 1400 years ago. So all of that is mainly basically talking about specific context. That's not to say that they cannot be applicable elsewhere. They may be applicable elsewhere, but again, you need to understand them first within this context. When? At what step? Because the relationship between Muslims and the pagans of Mecca has been always a relationship of enemies. They kicked the Prophet ﷺ and the believers from their home. So those are called what? Enemies. They come all the way to chase them in Medina for more than one occasion. What do you call that? Enemies. How should you deal with their enemy? Those verses are talking about that. What should you do? Fight against them and do all of that. So it's talking about this context. We need to familiarize ourselves with the context of those verses. Passages should be read in their contextual and historical context, not out of context. So understanding the context will give you a better understanding of it. Let's focus on one verse. Kill them all, wherever you find them. That's in the Quran. But how can we understand it? Fight in the cause of God. Only against those who fight against you. fight in the cause of Allah only against those who fight against you. But do not exceed, وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا, do not exceed the limits. For God does not like transgressors. So Allah is telling us what? Fight against those who fight against you. Do not cross the limits. And then he said, kill them wherever you find them. They would take that and they would propagate it to people. That's what you see. That's what Quran says. Kill them wherever you find them. Let's read the end of the the verses, the rest of the verses. Kill them wherever you find them and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. So he's talking about the people of Mecca. Muslims felt some, how can we, a haram for them, Mecca is a sacred, holy place. How can we fight in it? How can we attack them? When they were coming to, make Umrah after that, after 6 years of them being out of Mecca, and now, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he saw a dream that he's making Umrah, and he said, well, let's go make Umrah. They're coming to Mecca right now, around year 6 after Hijrah. And now Muslims are thinking, what if they think to fight against us? How should we do? What should we do? Are we going to fight in the Haram? For them, Haram is some sacred place. We cannot fight in there. So Allah told them, no, you can kill them. They're the enemy. They start the oppression. You are going in peace. Nothing with you. If they fight against you in the Haram, let's read the rest of the ayat. Drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. For spreading mischief is worse than killing. And do not fight them within the precincts of the sacred mosque unless they attack you therein. But if they fight you, then fight them. That is the punishment of the disbelievers. If they cease, then surely God is all forgiving, most merciful. That's Quran chapter 2. So the ayat is talking about you're going to make Umrah right now. If they start fighting against you, even if it's in Haram, fight them. And don't forget, they have driven you out of there. So you're not doing anything, you didn't start that. And again, do not start fighting. That's only if they fight against you. You can't fight against them. Do not start any fighting or do not make any fighting within the Haram unless they fight against you. Is that clear now? Is that the same meaning? Like, kill them wherever you find them? Does it give you the same meaning? No, it's clear now. Allah has given permission to some people who have been, oppressed, taken out of their homes, and now they are coming back to make Umrah, and they are afraid. What if the enemies still fight against us? Shall we fight back or not? Then Allah is giving them the permission to fight back. Please read more on that for explanation. Yes, sir.
Are there verses in the Bible that you know that have
coming?
Okay.
Coming, you will see them. So, and you can share with us if you didn't see any verse. You will see some horrific verses coming in the Bible. So, if you want to, see how the Prophet ﷺ used to give the ethics of war that he used to give to the fighters before they go for fight, here's one hadith, just one hadith. Anas narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, he used to say to the group as he sent them the expeditions, انطلقوا بسم الله. He used to say, go by the name of Allah and with Allah. Do not kill an old man, a woman, a child, and do not. He kept giving them instructions until he said, reform and be equitable, for Allah loves those who act with equity. وَأَصْلِحُوا. If you are going to war, to reform, to make good things. Obviously, war is about demolition of everything. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sending them to war and telling them in other longer version, just for the sake of the slide, it shows a shorter one. He said, do not cut a tree. Do not set fire in anything. Do not, if somebody is wounded and they are retreating, do not chase them. Do not go after them. If somebody, in more than one occasion, when somebody was wounded and from the enemy, and he's just to protect himself, he said, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I'm a Muslim now. I become a Muslim." It happened more than once. One time, Khalid killed him. He said, "No, you're just playing this trick on me to protect yourself," and he killed him. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his face turned red, and he was so much angry that how could he said, "Aqataltahu?" Did you kill him after he said La ilaha illallah? He said, Rasulullah, he just said it, it's obvious. He said it to protect himself. He said, Halla ashaqaqta an qalbi? Did you tear open his heart and see what's in there? So that's, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, one more time he saw a woman killed in the battlefield after the end, from the enemies. And again he becomes Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam so angry, and he said, Who did that? How can you do that? ما كانت هذه لتقاتل. This was not to fight, she's coming out and joining the army. Why? Obviously for logistic help and stuff, but most of the time she's not fighting. Do not kill her. Even if she is supporting the enemy and everything, do not kill. Do not kill them. We're talking about battlefield. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is still giving them, be peaceful, make peace and everything. Starting the fight, you have to let them know. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, never attack at night. Believe it or not. Do not attack at night. Stay until the daytime and stuff. And then you talk to people. Talk to them. Here we're coming to do that, this and that. We are after this and that. You have to make yourself visible and clear. That's not war. That's something else. So those are some of the ethics of war that were not known until later on. Now we have wars, a lot of wars, and a lot of violence, if you wish. But let's figure out how many people were killed in all wars during the Prophet's time. Prophet ﷺ got engaged in around 28 battles. And then there were so many other dispatches that he did not join. Islam is violent, and it's about wars. You have all of these battles. How many people were killed in 23 years? How many? Give it a guess. Unless you know it. Give it a guess. We're talking about 28 major battles. Some of them involve fighting against the superpower. At this time, Mu'tah, for example. How many people you imagine will be and should be killed logically? 5,000. Okay. No, the number was not like this. Did you give it a guess, sisters? 3,000? 5,000? Okay. Let's see. The number according to one. Oh my God. All right. The total, at least we got the total. The number according to Dr. Muhammad Imara, actually it's in gray, in all battles. In the first battle, for example, there was Muslims and non-Muslims. So those who were killed from the Muslim side and from the enemy side, those who were fighting against them. The total is 203 non-Muslims, 183 Muslims. That's not including the battle of Bani Qurayza, where 600 Jews shows they betrayed, they broke their treaty, they allied with the enemy of Medina back then, and then after the war is over, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam appointed just trial for them, muhakama adila, and he asked them to choose the judge, and they choose the judge in this trial, and the judge issued the rule that all the males should be executed, should be killed. So that's not actually, and even if you want to include those 600, it's going to come down to around 1,000, 1,200 or something. But actually they were not killed in war or anything. That was in a trial, and they choose that the judge, not talking about those 600. So if you exclude those 600, the total of all of those who were killed from non-Muslims, 203, from Muslims, 183. Which is like very close. The number is very close. Compare this with World War I, World War II. World War II, any numbers? Any guess?
20 million.
20 million? What about the 50 million? I read it. There are 50 million, World War II. You're talking about millions of people being killed. And then they say the Prophet is violent, Islam is violent. That's not right. Well, that was in the good times of the Prophet and the ideal time. Now let's talk about today in America, in here. This is a report by the FBI, a terrorist attacks on U.S. soil by group from 1980 to 2005, according to the FBI database. You can go and find this online yourself. It's in the website. I got this from there. So the terrorist attacks on American soil in here from 1980 or 85. 1980 up until 2005, all the terrorist attacks. Do you see the Muslims? The percentage of the Islamic terrorist acts here in the States? How many? What is the percentage? 6%. What about Jews? Jewish extremism. It's more than Muslims. There were more terrorist attacks on American soil from 1980 up until 2005, according to the FBI report for terrorist attacks on the American soil. More, 7% was done by Jews, 6% by Muslims. So Muslims were responsible, in other words, Muslims were responsible only about, or for how much? How much? 6%. So out of every 100 terrorist attacks on the American soil on that time period, Muslims were responsible for 6, Jews were responsible for 7, and then over 90%, 94% was done by non-Muslims, and only 6% was done by Muslims. Yet, terrorism, when you say terrorism, just, it will echo the word Muslim. Muslim, so it means that's not right. So even here, in the, in the worst of conditions and misunderstanding and everything, that's not true. Let's move forward. Taking things out of context here, let's deal with the Bible. If we look at one verse, and I try to focus on the New Testament. This is Matthew 10:34. Do not think, Jesus speaking, peace be upon him, according to that so-called Bible by Matthew. Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Take this out of context. What does it mean? It's not going to mean that Christianity is love and peace and tolerance. He said, I come with a sword. All right. Let's talk about Luke 19, number 27. As for those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and slaughter them in front of me. That's what the Bible is saying. Okay. In Exodus 15, number 3, Jehovah is a man of war. Jehovah is his name. So that's another, general text. You can find literally hundreds of those texts in the Old Testament. Isaiah, for example, 13, number 16, and you can just imagine that. You can imagine how much violence is in there. Their children, that means if you overcome an enemy, if you fight against enemy and now you win the war, what should you do? Their children shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Take the children of the enemy and shatter them into pieces in front of their eyes. Well, get your Bible. I think everybody should have that Bible if you want to give da'wah, just to look at it and see what it says and show it to others. So it says that their children shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes, their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. That's just one text, and for the sake of time, you can just type down violence in the Bible and you see how many verses are there. So it's talking about cutting into pieces, dashing little kids in front of their eyes. All right, jihad. Let's talk about jihad. It's there. Yeah, it's there. It's there. What does it mean? Linguistically, it means jahada, mujahadatan, walladhina jahadu fina. It's there in the Quran. It means to strive, to exert effort. So anybody who is, making, exerting effort and striving, that's mujahid. Not only somebody who got a sword and. So technically, it's to strive to overcome your desires. Mujahadatun nafs. This is one of it. Make jihad against your own self to control it. Strive and lower self to do good and avoid evil. So to make jihad, to strive to put yourself under control. And then it also means to fight for a valid cause. For a valid cause. Oh, that's the second point. So before we move quickly, jihad. We need to understand that for jihad, who can start war in Islam? Who has this permission? Who can start war, jihad? Who can give this order or start that? There has to be an order for Muslims. You're talking about a country. And then you have to have a head for that country. And then either the head of that country or the army of Muslims, that should give this order. It's not for anyone else. So if I decide to make jihad, even if I got crazy and I decide to do it, I can't. You can't. That's not going to be called jihad. That's something else. So what is this in today's sense? Who will allow or give the order for war to start here in the United States? We have a system, and the president is there, and he should sign that or he should start that. Anybody call that terrorism or anything? No, we have a system and we have an order. This country, attacked us of this group, so let's start. So in the same way, you should have an order, and we have some kind of hierarchy for the army, for the president, for the Khalifa, and then it should come from there through the right way. Any soldier, even in the army, he doesn't have power to start wars. He doesn't have power to do that. let alone any group anywhere. That's not right. That's definitely not correct. Oppression of women. Are we done with that? Do you have any question as far as the violence? Jihad.
See that they're supposed to fight and get into those qualities and so that they go to do it. So if they go to success, he doesn't make the decision. He doesn't make the decision. It's someone else who makes the decision. So he needs to be in the hands of someone who is not.
No. Let me share with you something. He's asking what if rulers are not there or they are not giving the permission or something. The Prophet ﷺ was there. He lived in Mecca. Oppression was there against them, and he never got the permission to fight. When did he get the permission to fight? After establishing the Muslim state in Medina, and then he established a systematic army and everything. Then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala gave them the permission. So that it's so clear that في حالة الاستضعاف وكذا, in case we are minorities or here, we cannot fight simply because you will not be able to do what jihad is about. Jihad is not about just fighting, it's about achieving some goals. So you have to prepare your power first, and you have to build the country and all of that before. So it's exactly the concept of war in the today's sense. In a country, the sovereignty should have power, and then you should have an army, and then that army fight against the enemies according to certain order. That's almost exactly the same thing. Any other questions or any other thing to share? Yes, sister.
This is what we get very upset about the Obama case. You mentioned the individuals of terror, the Christian debate, a good example of terror. And then when he told them, when they said that they were going to say, that's a lie. But yeah, the media now is very upset because they want to know what terrorists were.
That's right. We just give the example of something recent, World War I, World War II. But look further back a little bit, Crusades. There was a war that was under the cross and everything, and how many people were killed in there. So you can, know what's going on in terms of the number of people who were killed. Also, it should be acknowledged in here that our President Obama, he said something good. He gave a statement recently, a few days ago, 2-3 days ago, when he said that this war is not against Islam, it's against those, people who are doing this crazy thing, regardless of the politics behind it. But that's something that we need to really acknowledge. Anything else before we move on to the oppression of women? Okay, give me good 15 minutes and you should be covered with that, inshallah. The second big topic is the oppression against women in Islam. Most of injustices against Muslim women are because of un-Islamic, local, tribal cultures. It's not because of Islam. It's because of Egyptians, Pakistanis, that tribe, that group, that nation. We do have, we're not saying that Muslims, we are doing the best everywhere. Islam itself is telling us really unique things. But things in certain places, in certain countries, within certain groups might be different. They just happen to be Muslims. So we have the Arab, the Indo-Pak, the Afghan, the African, so many different cultures. Islamically, men and women are equal before God and law. Islamically, if a woman prays and a man prays, whose prayer counts more? I mean, they will get the reward. It depends on ikhlas, sincerity, and everything. But let's say that ikhlas, sincerity, everything is the same. Do we have anything to tell us that man will get more out of his prayer? No. Actually, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن, whoever does good, being a male or female believing person, فلنحيينهم حياة طيبة, we give them good life, ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن, and we give them the reward in the best way. So equal, men and women, in terms of being in full capacity in front of Allah and being also rewarded equally. Equal in rights and obligations. The total rights of men are equal the total rights of women. Total responsibilities of men equals the total responsibility of women. But within the details of each package, you might have some differences. And that's logical, because men and women are not identical, are they? They're not identical. A male is kind of stronger, he thinks differently, his emotions are different. Women are, so they are not identical So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not gonna give them identical things, but the total of everything they got, equal the total of everything that the other person got, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just, but they will be different here and there in minor things. The overall things, they are the same. Both get the same reward for good deeds and receive same punishment for evil ones. They have different roles and responsibilities to play. Oppression against women. Unlike pre-Islamic women in Arabia, if you want to compare the state historical background, the state of women in Arabia or elsewhere, anywhere when Islam appeared and then Islam came, you would know what it is like. Muslim women have a share in inheritance. They used to have no rights to inherit. Rather, they used to be inherited themselves. They looked at them as property to be inherited. Muslim women, they have their own property. That's from the time of the Prophet, more than 1,000 years ago. They are separate. They can have business. They can do, everything financially just like men. They can have a say in choosing future husband. He's talking about more than 1,000 years ago. Up until very recently, even in the Western countries, women did not have say in any of that. So Islam came to give them all of these basic rights. They can keep their last names after marriage. So women are separate. It doesn't mean that they are married. Not talking about what's being practiced. I'm sorry to say it's not Islamic. It's a shock or something, but this is not Islamic. Aisha radiallahu anha, after she got married to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, her name did not change to be Aisha Muhammad or Aisha Abu Talib or something. No, it would continue to be Aisha bint al-Siddiq, bint Abi Bakr, the daughter of Abu Bakr. So they carry their names. That's not the point in here that, what will happen, is it haram? Let's not focus on this, but it's a fact that Islam does not say you need to change your name when you get married. No, you keep your name. Percentage of women who go to colleges is higher than men's in some Muslim countries, probably higher than some European and Asian countries. Back home, with all of these countries, we see in many cases, women's number is could be higher in some countries than the men in college. In the U.S., let's talk about in the U.S. in here. Nationally, women make 77 cents for every $1 men earn in the USA. Are they equal? You say women should be equal. So for every dollar a man gets, women should get $1, but no, they get 77 cents. So they pay them less. We have this suffragette movement in 1920s, and correct me if I'm not saying it right. There was a movement of women up until this last century, less than 100 years ago. Less than 100 years ago. Women did not have rights basically to do anything, even here in the United States. They didn't have right to vote. They didn't have right to own property. It started sometime back in some states, but up until 1920, 1919, if you want, they didn't have the right to vote for president. In the presidential election, a woman cannot go and cast, a vote up until 1990, which is less than 100 years. They're not allowed to buy or take loans without signature of husband or father. No woman ever elected for president or vice president in North America in the past 250 years, which is the history of the United States. We have never seen any woman lead like in the president. And again, the first country to give them the power or the right to vote was which country? What was the country that first gave women the right to vote? It was not a Muslim country. Give it a guess. New Zealand, that's right. Do you see it in there? Yeah, it's in gray. So New Zealand, back in 1893 or 83, they were the first country. Thank you, brother. Anybody got a candy? Flower? It was New Zealand, 1983 or 93. They give women the right, 93, the right to vote in parliament. And then up until 1920, here in the States, women were allowed to vote in the presidential election everywhere. Up until 1920, less than 100 years ago. Compare this to the election of Uthman ibn Affan, for example. The election of Uthman ibn Affan in Medina more than 1,000 years ago. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf was the leader of the nomination committee. In the seerah, he went you know, there were 6 people who were kind of nominated by Umar radiallahu anhu to choose from, and everybody kept, you know, saying, no, I'm gonna drop, you know, until they ended up having the race between Ali and Uthman. And Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, he literally said, I went to every single house of Medina asking them, which one do you vote to? And the narration mentioned men and women. I asked them, what do you think? Ali or Uthman? Count their name. Ali or Uthman? Count their name. That was more than 1,000 years ago. Read it, I'm not making it up. Well, Sheikh Amr is making this up. What do we read in the Quran? يا أيها النبي إذا جاءك المؤمنات يبايعنك. Oh Prophet, that's in the Quran. When the believing women come to, what's bay'ah? Give you a pledge of allegiance. Women, that's towards the end of Surah Al-Mumtahana. When the believing women come to give you the pledge of allegiance, that's, in other words, in today's term is what? Kind of voting. So you're talking about women having a say. He already accepted the bay'ah of men, and he is done. So that should be it. Men said what they have to say. Done. No. Now the turn of women. إذا جاءك المؤمنات يبايعنك على ألا يشركن بالله. Such and such. That's the thing in here. You accept that. You get pledgeable. So they had some kind of right to vote, to have a say, to speak up. Up until 1920 here in the States, they didn't have that right. And let's have a look. That's the list of presidents of the United States. Do you see any woman in there? You see any woman? Maybe one of our sisters will be next, huh? So no woman is in there.
One Muslim.
One Muslim? All right. And he's black too, right? So that's Canada. Yeah, we see one woman last appeared in Canada. That was 1993. So yeah, it's good. Okay. What about Islamic countries? If we look at reality for what it is, we're not saying Islamic or not Islamic, but reality of Muslims, reality of, what about them? Do you ever expect that we have women presidents leading? It's not 1 or 2 or 3. It's actually all of these people are in there. Anybody knows the one to the left? The second one is known, right? Okay. That's Bhutto, Nazir Bhutto. This is the president of Indonesia. At a certain point, the most populous Muslim majority country elected Megawati Sukarno as president. One in red, top left. And then the next one is Nazir Bhutto, regardless of corruption or whatever. But that happened. That's happened. We're not saying again right or wrong. But if you're talking about is women being oppressed, no. I mean, the reality is in there. And then this, the third one in green, that's Bangladesh, the third most populous Muslim majority country elected Khalida Zia and Sheikha Hasina, the next one, as prime ministers. And then the one to the right, this is the Turkey, the fifth most populous Muslim majority country elected Tansu Çiller as prime minister. Many have led their countries throughout Islamic history. So it doesn't look also like, you know, even looking at the reality, it doesn't sound like women are oppressed or something if you compare East to the West. Again, we're not saying that Muslims are doing the best in all. Looking at reality, that's the reality in here. Oppression of women, talking about inheritance quickly. Yes, we do have in some cases Muslims, a female has 1 of 3 shares in inheritance. 1, she can have less than a male's share, son and daughter. 2, she can have an equal share to that of the male, maternal brothers and sisters. She may have, number 3, bigger share than a male's. So shares depend on relationship to the deceased, not the sex. Males pay dowry, plus they spend on family, women don't. So those who attended, we have been discussing inheritance rules with the sisters, with the brothers for the last, month or so, maybe more than a month. They would know that it really depends on the relationship rather than, the gender of the person. And we will look at this quickly. Just quick examples, 3 examples. Somebody died and left $24,000, right? And he left a mother, wife, son, and a daughter. That's going to be the shares. The mother will take 1/6, which is 4,000. A wife will take 1/8, which is 3,000. Son will take around 11,200. The daughter will take around 5,000, which is half of that, 5,600. Why? They are on the same level. Why a son and a daughter? They are brothers, they are siblings. Why some will take half of the other one? I make the calculation very quickly with you. This son, this very mas'ala in here, son and the daughter. Let's assume that both of them, they need to get married. They need to get married. Both of them are single and they need to get married. Because if you have to judge something, you have to look at the bigger picture, right? So you better judge it. Financially, the son is going to pick a bride for him. The daughter is going to pick a male to get married to, right? So both of them will go out and they are trying to get married. What are the responsibilities of the son? What should he pay? Dowry. So let's assume, he will pay 5,000 as dowry, for example, just 5,000. That's all. So he will pay 5,000 to that bride of his. How much he is left with? How much he's left with? Let's assume he got 11. So he's left with 6,000 in his hand. How about the daughter? She gonna get married, and let's assume she's gonna get 5,000 from the other guy. So she will end up having how much? You tell me, isn't it true? She can ask for more if she wants, but let's assume the son will pay 5,000 and she would receive 5,000 from the other one. So she will end up having more than 10,000, close to 11,000. Now she is married. Is she responsible for anything? Financially responsible to spend, to take care of anything in the house? Islamically, no. Her husband should pay for her. So the daughter ends up having close to 11,000, and that's for herself. And then she can have a business on the side. Maybe a guy will die from the family. She will inherit more from him or something. She's not responsible for anything. The son, he is having in his hand close to 6,000, and he still has to pay, for everything. And even if no one is there to take care of the daughter, he has to take care of his sister. So that looks like fair, because Islam gives him more responsibility, financial responsibility. But we do have, that's not it. We do have other examples. Died and left 24,000. Mother, brother, and sister. The mother will take 1/3, 8,000. Brother from mother side will take 8,000. Sister from mother side will take 8,000. They are equal. That's what how Allah said it. Al-Kalala in Surah An-Nisa. That's how they will take. They are equal. So a brother from the mother side and a sister from the mother side, both of them will take 8,000. A third mas'ala, died and left 24,000. Mother, wife, 5 sons, and 2 daughters, and 1 brother. The mother will take 1/6, which is around 4,000. Wife will take 1/8, 3,000. 5 sons, around 2,800 each. 2 daughters will take 1,400 each, and 1 brother will take 0. So that brother is not going to take nothing because of both of these. So she took more than that male family member in here. If it's only by the gender, males will take more. Why? This will take 0, but she will take 1,400. No, it's by something else. It's by how close you are to the deceased. Is that clear? And we have so many other cases because of this woman in there. Other males will either decrease, will take less, or they might not take at all because of the daughter in there, because of somebody who is close to the deceased and he happened to be a female. So that's not right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a full picture that we need to consider. Oppression of women. Let's talk about polygamy. Men. A lot of sisters, just give me some time to explain what's going on in here. But we do have this in Islam, do we? Polygamy, having more than 1 wife. Is it right? Do we have it? Yes. All yeses are coming from here. Do we have it, sisters? Yes, 1 sister. All right. So we do have it in Islam. It's permissible if conditions are met. Otherwise, it is prohibited. If somebody cannot fulfill the conditions, well, it's haram to do. With the exception of John the Baptist, and Jesus, almost all biblical prophets are polygamists. So if a Christian is talking to you about polygamy, the best way for defense is offense. I mean, you talk about polygamy as an Islamic concept? No, it's not an Islamic concept. All your biblical prophets, everybody is polygamous out there, with the exception of John and Jesus. So Solomon, for example, had how many wives? 700 plus. So 700 plus. Dawood alayhi salam, he had so many wives and concubines, according to those are the references in there. Recommended in Islam, it's recommended for humanitarian purposes, after wars, too many widows, and so on. Islam is the only religion that limits the number of wives to 1, up to 4. So before that, any religion is usually talking about unlimited marriages or something. But Islam is talking about limited number. Yes, it's more than one, but it's you cannot. If you have four, that's it for you. So those are just facts to start with. Let's continue discussing it.
Solomon and David, those concubines were not haram.
They were not.
Haram.
They were not.
They were not haram.
Yeah, but even if not considering the concubines, we're talking about 700 plus. So it's there. But again, the context itself, you need to go back to the time of Solomon alayhi salam and be like him, prophet and king, to figure out what's going on. So marry woman of your choice. This is the ayah in here. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِنَ النِّسَاءِ 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you should not be able to deal justly with them, then marry only one. This is closer to justice. Polygamy is practiced in only, talking about reality, practiced in only a few Gulf countries, I mean in a wide scale. Mostly Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and those other Gulf countries, and is usually frowned upon in the most Muslim countries. Muslims, talking about reality again, Muslims are probably the most monogamous people in the world. Since the great majority of them know only one partner, husband or wife, in their whole lives. No dating, no premarital or extramarital relationship. So you can consider the wives versus mistress. I think I have some funny facts in here and some pictures. Men tend to be more polygamous than women. It's not only Muslim men. Men in general, they tend to be polygamous. So 50 to 60% of married men cheat on their wives in the US. That's according to the American Chronicle and the sources in there. 50 to 60% of men, they tend to have other relationships, married men. That's the sources in there. A woman is raped in the US every 2 minutes, according to the US Department of Justice. How many men are raped? Well, so every 2 minutes, you know, that tells you the mentality of men and things like that. 2004 ABC News poll reported that women surveyed say they have an average of 6 partners, while men reported 20. Average, no partners during their lifetime. And the source is right there. So the women tend to be more like a mango with one seed, right? A man tends to be like a watermelon. One watermelon with so many seeds. That's the nature of men. Talking about the reality. And then talking about the reality again, we see the politicians and clergy people from Jimmy Swaggart and so many other, you know, scandals and people, you know, who are like elite. And we see them, they tend to have some kind of relationship outside marriage, and those are the examples. But in Islam, again, we mentioned the conditions and everything. There are conditions that a person should be, you know, capable of doing that. And a person should be, you know, the 2 main conditions for that is al-adl, he should have justice and capability to do that. He should be capable of doing that and justice. Then what if this happens? Is the woman forced to stay in a relationship with him? The answer is no. If she doesn't like at any point, even without him getting married to another woman, if she doesn't like him and she wants to be outside of this marriage, she has the right in Islam to do that. Through asking for talaq, through khul', she can do the khul'. So many ways, you know, she is not a slave in any way. Yes, she should have a valid reason to get out of a marriage, but she cannot be forced to stay in a marriage that she doesn't want to continue in. But matter of fact, talking about the reality, there might be sometimes a need to do that. You know, after wars, for example, the number of women are much more than the number of men in many places. So even looking at the rights of women, the right of each woman, you know, is entitled to have at least 1 man. In many places, if you have 1 man for 1 woman, then how would it work when women are more than men? Again, you have to have justice, and it should be practiced in the right way. And reality is telling us otherwise. Reality is telling us that Muslims in majority are monogamous. Muslims in majority, they have relationship to Muslim men, to just in the most part to one partner through marriage. But others, they tend to have much more relationships. And it's not only practiced by Islam or, you know, inspired by Islam, it's done even in the previous context. Hijab and niqab and honor killing, we can talk about so many other stuff. Again, when we say hijab, when we say this, it's not only Islamic, because every time you see Sayyidah Maryam, the way they depict her, alayhi salam, they depict her with a hijab, a scarf. So we are closer to Maryam. a Muslim sister would look more like a Maryam, Mary, peace be upon her, like any regular average Christian person. Sister Hiba quoted last week the verse from the Bible to say what is the rule, what is the ruling of a Muslim uncovering her hair according to the Bible, and what should happen. And it was some kind of a top thing that her head should be shaved. You know, her hair should be shaved if a woman uncover her hair. That's according to the Bible. Another quotation: a woman does not have the right to speak in the church. Which verse is that in the Bible, Sister Saida? You know, it's in the New Testament. A woman does not have the right to speak in the church. If she wants to have something, she should ask a male, her husband or something, to ask the question for her to speak up. She cannot. Right. So that's we say. Right. So it's there. It's not only an Islamic thing or Muslims like invented it. No, it's right there. That was a very, very, very quick presentation. Things about violence and more about women need more time, but that was just an eye opener. Anything to share? Any question? The presentation is over. If anybody wants to leave, you are welcome to. Please turn on the light. Yes, sister. Turn on the light. And if anybody wants to share anything, please go ahead. Yes. I'm trying to follow with you, but unfortunately the mic cannot do it. What was not allowed? Say it again for me, please. If we have an example, I have to add the wireless mic. Let me hand it over to you. All right. Please close the door. Yeah, that's another point. They married too early, and they married children. Sayyidah Aisha, she was only 9, and that's an authentic relationship. Many Muslims try to say, no, it's not a thing. No, it's authentic. It's authentic. He married Sayyidah Aisha when she was 9. But now, let's discuss this very quickly. Well, he got married to her. He, what do you call it? Consummated the marriage at the age of 9. But it looks like he had a relationship with her. But let's again come back to the historical context. He actually proposed to her when she was 6 years old, and then he waited for 3 years until the consummation of marriage. For us, yeah, that's a child in our terms nowadays. But is it the case when you go back then? Is it the case when you go to Africa in these days? Usually in hot weather countries, women and men, they reach the age of puberty faster than those who live in colder climates. So that is the reality. They reach, the age of puberty really very early. That's one thing. The other thing is Sayyidah Aisha, she was already engaged to someone before the Prophet ﷺ proposed to her. So yeah. But before we talk about this, do we have a clear definition for childhood, for example? What is it? What age? Starts from what age? Up until what age? Which is the age of what? Puberty, which is the age of what? 12? Are you sure it's 12? Okay. Believe it or not, that even here in the United States, we have certain states that allow marriage at a much younger age than you think. What is the age that a girl can get married in? The minimum age that a girl can get married in according to some states. Give it a guess. Give it a say. Not 9. I mean, it's too young. 15, 13. Is it 13 or 12? What state is it? Massachusetts allow a girl to marry at the age of 13 with the consent of the father, right, or parents, right? But a 13-year-old is for you what? For us, in the today's sense, is a child. For me too. Today's sense, that's still a child. It's there in the United States. In other countries, Netherlands, they allow children at the age of 12. So you're talking about 2 or 3 years difference. Prophet ﷺ, back then, he got married to Sayyidah Aisha at the age of 9. And some countries and some states at the age of 12 or 13. So, I mean, my grandma, your grandmother, whoever got the story, at what age they got married? 12? Your grandma got married at the age of 12? All right. And it was socially accepted. That was the social practice of this time. No one would say, well, you're wrong. How can you marry a child? Let's consider another factor. Prophet ﷺ brought something new, a religion, and he's trying to flip the societal, system back then. So it looks like everybody would pick up on him. And they were waiting for the little mistake that he would do to do what? To attack him. Are you aware of anybody, Abu Sufyan, Abu Jahl, all of these guys before I was going to go accept them? Did anybody say, well, how could you do that? How could you marry a child? Did anybody say that? Are you aware of anything in the Seerah or even non-Muslims who got any narration from anybody of the enemies of the Prophet who said that back then? The answer is no. So what does it mean? It was socially acceptable, normal, nothing wrong. Girls would reach the age of puberty much sooner than they would do nowadays. So it was acceptable back then. Nobody attacked him. She was already engaged before him. It was practiced socially. Did Islam ever say, you have to get married at the age of 9? Or give your daughters in marriage at the age of 9? That would be a problem, but he didn't say that. Fuqaha are talking about what is the right age of marriage. قالوا إذا كانت تطيق النكاح. That whatever the age, as long as the girl is fully in full capacity to get married. Well, that varies. An African country might be different than a Western country. It really depends. Some kids, and even from person to person. One person, she's 18, but she's still like not really ready for marriage, not full. So fine. So did Islam say anything force them to get married? They have no. It never say anything like that. But back to the point of the Prophet ﷺ, just consider those points. It was socially acceptable back then, but not only back then. It was socially acceptable up until recently, even here in the United States. Your grandfather or grandmother, maybe even your father and mother, if you're older enough, they were marrying at really a young age. Forget and ignore all of that. Up until nowadays, it's legal, according to Sister Hiba in here, and you can go make a research. Other states might allow it at 14, at 16. Maybe more or less, but we are having some states who allow marriage at the age of 13. Difference is kind of what is it? Right, yes, nowadays legal.
Be educated, they don't know these things, and so this is very important too. Kind of bad out the mom because
So talking about marriage, if you just read our legacy, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, more than 1400 years ago, before any organization was there to talk about women's rights and everything, a girl, her dad gave her in marriage to his cousin, to his nephew, against her will, without just consulting with her. She knew as a Muslim back then that she has the right to say no. You're talking about Arabia. You're talking about a desert, Bedouin, nomad people. It's kind of hard to say no to your father back then. Well, then we don't have parliaments, we don't have women movements or anything, but we do have Islam. We tell people the right. Islam told this girl back then, your right is such and such. She came to the Prophet ﷺ. She said, Ya Rasulullah, hadith, authentic. My father gave me in marriage to his nephew. And what is that? How should this work? He said, if you say it's completely up to you. If you agree on this marriage, if you ratify this marriage, then it's valid. If you say no, then it's annulled. It's not, it did not even happen. So she said, Ya Rasulullah, I would accept. I just wanted everybody who come later on to know we have the right to say no. Have you ever heard of this hadith? Am I making it up? It's there. It's there. The hadith is there. So the woman has the right to say no if she doesn't feel, that I'm old enough or I'm whatever. So it's there. That's what Islam is giving as far as the rights of women. Yes. I can hear you, but I believe I need to extend the mic a little bit. Yes. Go ahead, please. I think it's going to reach there.
I was going to touch on this point very quickly about and the young marriage age to follow up on what you were mentioning. I found that when we do Dawah, one of the most productive ways to begin Dawah with the American non-Muslims is to remind women first that you cannot think of the question that they're posing in terms of the year 2015. That you have to be open-minded, and I often ask them, are you willing to be open-minded and consider other possibilities? Consider that you've not superimposed your cultural definitions of today upon something that happened 1,000 years ago, or even 100 years ago, or 200 years ago. When you get them to agree